The shot rang out across the dusty main street of Redemption Springs, silencing the crowd gathered for the auction. Gideon Vance's hand remained steady, his revolver pointing skyward as the echo faded into the afternoon heat. No one had expected the quiet stranger to intervene, least of all on behalf of the woman standing on the auction block, her eyes downcast and wrists bound. "I reckon that got everyone's attention," Gideon said, holstering his weapon with practiced ease. His worn leather boots kicked up small clouds of dust as he approached the makeshift platform. "I bid $1. Laughter erupted from the assembled townsfolk and cowboys. Someone shouted, "You can't even buy a decent meal for that, stranger." The auctioneer, a rotund man with a sweaty face and pinstriped vest, sneered at Gideon. "This here is an indenture auction, mister. The lady owes significant debts. Opening bid is $50. Gideon didn't flinch. The woman, Olivia Lancaster, according to the poster, finally raised her head. Her auburn hair was matted, her face smudged with dirt, but her hazel eyes burned with a fierce dignity that struck Gideon to his core. $1, he repeated, louder this time. "That's all it takes to save an angel." The year was 1878, and the American frontier was both a promise and a sentence. For some, it offered freedom from the constraints of the East. For others, like Olivia, it had become a trap of broken dreams and crushing debt. The auctioneer's face reddened. "This ain't no charity, cowboy. Either bid proper or step aside. The lady's not for sale," Gideon said, his voice low but carrying across the now silent street. "I'm offering $1 against her debts, and I'm offering something else too." He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a folded document. "This here's a bank draft for the remainder of what she owes, signed by Judge Hamilton himself." The auctioneer snatched the paper, eyes widening as he read. The crowd murmured in surprise. Judge Hamilton's authority was unquestioned in these parts. "Why the dollar, then?" someone called out. Gideon's gaze never left Olivia's face. "Because a person ain't property. That dollar's for her freedom, not her debt. The debt's between banks and men, but freedom's between a soul and its maker." The auctioneer cleared his throat, visibly deflated. "Seems the lady's debts are settled legal-like." Auction's over. As the disappointed crowd dispersed, Gideon approached Olivia. Up close, he could see the exhaustion etched into her face and the wariness in her eyes. "Why would you help a stranger?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Gideon shrugged as he untied her bonds. "Ain't we all strangers until we ain't?" Olivia rubbed her chafed wrists. "I can't repay you." "Wasn't looking to be repaid, Miss Lancaster." The skepticism in her eyes cut deeper than any knife could. She'd learned the hard way that kindness on the frontier usually came with strings attached. "My hotel room's paid through the week," Gideon said. "You can have it. I'll bunk with my horse." "And what do you want in return?" Suspicion laced her words. "Nothing." He handed her the key. "Room 4 at the Frontier Hotel. There's a bathhouse out back. Food's decent." Olivia clutched the key, still not believing. "You don't even know me." "No, madam, I don't," Gideon agreed, "but I know what it's like to need help and have none come." He tipped his hat and turned to leave. "Wait," she called after him. "Your name, at least tell me that." Gideon Vance." "Thank you, Mr. Vance." Her voice was stronger now, with a hint of the woman she must have been before hardship had ground her down. "Madam." He nodded and walked away, feeling her gaze on his back. He hadn't planned on staying long in Redemption Springs, just passing through like so many towns before. But something told him his plans had just changed. Olivia watched him disappear into the dusty street, this strange cowboy who had bid $1 for her freedom. She had come west 3 years ago, full of hope and dreams, only to find herself trapped by circumstance and the death of her husband. Thomas had left her with nothing but debts and broken promises. The key felt heavy in her palm. A room, a bath, food, simple things that had become luxuries. And yet she couldn't shake the feeling that accepting them was accepting something more, something she wasn't ready for. But she had nowhere else to go. Her home had been seized, her possessions sold. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. With a deep breath, Olivia made her way to the Frontier Hotel, ignoring the whispers and stares that followed her. The desk clerk gave her a disdainful look, but handed over fresh towels when she presented the key. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window overlooking the town's main thoroughfare. After drawing the curtains, Olivia sank onto the bed, overwhelmed by the day's events. She didn't cry. She had exhausted her tears long ago. Instead, she gathered what remained of her strength and headed for the bathhouse. An hour later, scrubbed clean and dressed in the only decent dress she had left, Olivia felt almost human again. Her long hair, now clean and combed, hung in damp waves down her back. The face that looked back at her from the small mirror was thinner than she remembered, but her eyes still held determination. She would repay Gideon Vance somehow. And then she would rebuild her life, brick by brick if necessary. The hotel dining room was nearly empty when she entered. A few travelers hunched over bowls of stew, and in the corner, Gideon sat alone, nursing a cup of coffee. He rose when he saw her, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "You clean up nice, Miss Lancaster," he said as she approached, his tone respectful. "I feel human again," she admitted, taking the offered seat. "Mr. Vance, I need to understand why you did what you did today." Gideon signaled to the server before answering. "Sometimes a man just does what needs doing." "That's not an answer," he smiled faintly. "No, I suppose it isn't." He waited until the server had placed a bowl of stew and a cup of coffee in front of Olivia before continuing. "I saw the auction notice yesterday. Got curious about your story. Folks talk in small towns." Olivia's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "And what story did they tell?" "That you came west with your husband. That he died owing money to half the county. That you tried to make it on your own, but the bank wouldn't extend your loans." He sipped his coffee. "That you're too proud to accept charity but too honest to run." "They got that much right," she said quietly. "I don't abide slavery in any form, Miss Lancaster. And debt slavery's still slavery, just dressed up in banker's clothes." Olivia ate a few bites, savoring the simple meal. "The bank draft, was it real?" Gideon nodded. "Judge Hamilton's an old friend. He thinks the bank's foreclosure was premature and possibly not legal. He's looking into it." Hope fluttered in Olivia's chest before she ruthlessly suppressed it. She'd learned that hope was a dangerous luxury. "Why the performance with the $1 then?" she asked. "Some lessons need teaching public," Gideon replied, his eyes hardening momentarily. "And some people need reminding that not everything's for sale." Olivia studied him across the table, this lean, weathered cowboy with surprisingly gentle eyes. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but there was something compelling about his face, an integrity that shone through. "Who are you, Gideon Vance? Really? Just a man passing through, with enough influence to get a judge to intervene in a foreclosure. With enough money to pay off a stranger's debts." She shook her head. "I don't believe you're just anything." Gideon's mouth quirked in a half smile. "We all have our stories, Miss Lancaster. Maybe someday I'll tell you mine." "I owe you my life," she said softly. "No, madam. You don't owe me a thing." He stood up, placing coins on the table for their meal. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's soon enough to figure out what comes next." As he walked away, Olivia realized something startling. For the first time in months, she was thinking about tomorrow with something other than dread. Morning came with the smell of coffee and bacon. Olivia opened her eyes to sunlight streaming through the thin curtains. For a moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then yesterday's events rushed back: the auction, the mysterious cowboy, the unexpected reprieve. A knock at the door startled her. Hastily pulling on her dress, she called, "Who is it?" "Delivery for Miss Lancaster," came a young voice. Opening the door a crack, Olivia found a boy of about 12 holding a package. "Mr. Vance said to bring this up," he explained. Inside the brown paper package, Olivia found a new dress of practical blue cotton, a shawl, undergarments, and sturdy boots. Practical things, not frivolous but of good quality. Beneath them was a note in a firm hand. "A woman needs her dignity. No strings attached. G.V." Tears pricked at her eyes. How long had it been since someone had shown her such consideration? Dressed in her new clothes, Olivia made her way downstairs. The hotel lobby was busier now, travelers checking out and locals stopping by for breakfast. There was no sign of Gideon. The clerk handed her an envelope. "Mr. Vance left this for you." Inside was $50 and another note. "To tide you over. Judge Hamilton would like to see you at 10 o'clock about your property." Olivia's heart raced. Her property? But that had been seized months ago after Thomas's debts came due. At precisely 10 o'clock, she presented herself at the judge's office, a small building near the courthouse. Judge Hamilton, a white-haired man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed spectacles, greeted her warmly. "Mrs. Lancaster, please sit down. I've been reviewing your late husband's affairs." "There's nothing to review, Your Honor. The bank took everything." "Yes, well, about that." The judge shuffled through some papers. "It seems there were irregularities in how your husband's debts were calculated. Interest compounded improperly, fees that shouldn't have been applied." He looked up at her. "Moreover, the deed to your land was in both your names, which means the bank could only seize your husband's half interest upon his death. Your half remained yours." Olivia gripped the arms of her chair. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying, Mrs. Lancaster, that the bank owes you money and your property should be returned to you." "How?" She couldn't finish the question. "Mr. Vance brought these discrepancies to my attention. He has a sharp eye for legal matters." "Who is he?" Olivia asked, bewildered by this turn of events. The judge smiled. "A man who believes in justice, Mrs. Lancaster. Beyond that, it's his story to tell." He handed her a document. "This orders the bank to release your property back to you and to compensate you for improper seizure. You'll need to sign here." With a shaking hand, Olivia signed. Could it really be this simple? After months of fighting and pleading with the bank, could her home truly be hers again? "Where can I find Mr. Vance to thank him?" she asked as she rose to leave. "Try the livery stable. He mentioned checking on his horse." Olivia practically ran through the streets, the legal document clutched tightly in her hand. The livery stable stood at the edge of town, a large wooden structure smelling of hay and horses. She found Gideon grooming a magnificent chestnut gelding, his sleeves rolled up and his hat hung on a nearby post. He looked up as she entered, a smile breaking across his face at the sight of her. "I take it you've seen the judge," he said. Olivia nodded, suddenly finding it hard to speak. "Why?" She finally managed. "Why would you do all this for someone you don't know?" Gideon ran a hand along his horse's neck. "Maybe I know you better than you think, Olivia Lancaster." "That's not possible." 3 years ago, a stagecoach overturned outside of Santa Fe. A young woman tended to the injured until help came. One of those injured was my brother. He met her gaze. He described the woman with the gentle hands and fierce determination. Said she refused payment, only asked that he help someone else in need someday. Olivia's breath caught. She remembered that day, the overturned stagecoach, the injured passengers. "Your brother. Was he the young man with the broken arm? Gideon nodded. James. He never forgot what you did. When I mentioned I was passing through these parts, he asked me to look you up, see if you needed anything. His expression grew somber. I didn't expect to find you on an auction block. So this was repaying a debt. Olivia felt strangely disappointed. It started that way, Gideon admitted. But then I spent 2 days in this town, hearing about the widow who worked herself to the bone trying to keep her land, who helped anyone who needed it even when she had nothing herself. He took a step closer to her. By the time I saw you on that platform, it wasn't about debts anymore. What was it about then? His eyes held hers. Justice, decency, and maybe something else I'm not ready to name just yet. Olivia felt a warmth bloom in her chest that had nothing to do with the summer heat. Well, whatever your reasons, I can go home now. My real home. Where is home? He asked. A small farm about 5 miles west of here. Nothing fancy, but the land is good. Gideon nodded, reaching for his hat. I'd be pleased to escort you there if you'd allow it. I'd like that, Olivia said, surprised by how much she meant it. They rode out that afternoon, Olivia on a gentle mare borrowed from the livery, Gideon on his chestnut. The land opened up before them, rolling hills dotted with scrub brush and the occasional cluster of trees. The air smelled of sage and sun-baked earth. As they crested a hill, Olivia's farm came into view. The small wooden house stood weathered but intact, surrounded by fields gone fallow in her absence. A barn leaned slightly to one side, and a chicken coop sat empty near what had once been a vegetable garden. It's not much, she said, suddenly seeing it through his eyes. It's everything, Gideon replied. Land of your own, freedom to choose your path. They dismounted in the yard. Olivia approached the house slowly, as if afraid it might disappear. When she pushed open the door, dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the windows. The furniture was still there, covered in sheets. The bank hadn't bothered to sell off items of such little value. Gideon remained outside, giving her space to reacquaint herself with her home. When she emerged, he was examining the barn. Roof needs work, he observed, but the structure's sound. Are you a carpenter as well as a legal expert? Olivia asked, a hint of teasing in her voice. Jack of all trades, he replied with a smile, and master of none, as my pa used to say. They spent the rest of the afternoon taking inventory. The well was still good. The fields would need plowing, the garden replanting. The chickens were long gone, but the coop could be rebuilt. As dusk approached, Gideon built a fire in the long, cold hearth while Olivia swept away the worst of the dust. From his saddlebags he produced bread, cheese, and a bottle of wine. A homecoming should be celebrated, he said, pouring the wine into tin cups. They ate by firelight, sitting on the floor with their backs against the old sofa. Olivia felt a contentment she hadn't experienced in years. Will you tell me your story now? She asked as they finished the meal. Gideon gazed into the fire. Not much to tell. Born in Virginia. Family moved west after the war. Pa was a lawyer before he took to farming, taught me to read law books alongside the Bible. He took a sip of wine. When he died, the farm went to my older brother. I drifted, worked ranches, drove cattle. Did some legal work here and there for folks who couldn't afford proper lawyers. And now I'm here. His eyes met hers. Wasn't planning to stay in these parts, but plans change. The implications of his words hung in the air between them. I can't offer you anything, Olivia said softly. This place will take everything I have just to make it viable again. I'm not asking for anything. Gideon's voice was equally quiet. Except maybe the chance to help, and to see where this road leads. In the firelight, his face was all plains and shadows, his eyes reflecting the flames. Olivia felt something stir within her, a feeling she had thought died with Thomas. I should go, Gideon said, rising. It's not proper me being here after dark. Olivia rose too. Where will you stay? I've got my bedroll, the barn will do fine. No, Olivia said firmly. Not the barn. There's a small cabin out back. It's where the hired help stayed when we had any. It's not much, but it's better than the barn. Gideon nodded. Thank you. They stood facing each other, the fire crackling behind them, the night pressing in around the small circle of light. Good night, Olivia Lancaster, Gideon said, his voice rough. Good night, Gideon Vance, she replied, watching as he gathered his things and slipped out into the darkness. The days that followed took on a rhythm. Gideon proved as good as his word, helping Olivia restore the farm piece by piece. They repaired the barn roof first, then tackled the chicken coop. He showed her how to fix the broken pump handle at the well, and together they cleared the fields of weeds and stones. They worked side by side from sunrise to sunset, talking sometimes, silent at others, but always aware of each other's presence. Olivia found herself watching him when he wasn't looking, the way his hands moved with surprising gentleness for their size, the way the sun had burned his skin to the color of tanned leather, the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch, too tired for much conversation. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with the sounds of cicadas and the occasional hoot of an owl. A week after their arrival at the farm, Gideon rode into town for supplies. He returned with seeds for the garden, chicks to rebuild the flock, and news. Bank manager's been replaced, he told Olivia as they unloaded the wagon. Seems the judge's investigation turned up more irregularities than just yours. Several farmers might be getting their land back. Olivia paused, a sack of flour in her arms. That's wonderful news. There's more. Judge Hamilton's offered me work, legal consultant for cases like yours. Said there's too much happening for him to handle alone. Will you take it? Olivia asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Gideon studied her face. It would mean staying in the area. I see. Would that bother you? Olivia set down the flour. No, she said honestly. It wouldn't bother me at all. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had put into words. That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Gideon finally told her the rest of his story. I was married once, he said, his voice low. Her name was Sarah. We were young, just starting out. Had a small place in Colorado. He paused. She died in childbirth, the baby too. Olivia's heart ached for him. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago, 7 years now. He stared out at the darkening fields. After that, I couldn't stay in one place. Kept moving, like if I stopped, the pain would catch up to me. And has it? It caught me years ago, he said with a sad smile. But lately, I've been thinking maybe it's time to stop running. Olivia understood running from pain. After Thomas died, she had thrown herself into saving the farm, working from dawn until she collapsed into bed at night, too exhausted to feel the loneliness. Thomas and I were married 4 years, she said, offering her own story in return. He was charming, full of big dreams. He borrowed money for schemes that never quite worked out. She sighed. I loved him, but he wasn't practical. When he got sick, there was no money for a doctor. By the time I realized how serious it was too late. That's a heavy burden to carry. No heavier than yours, she replied. Gideon reached across the space between their chairs, his hand finding hers in the growing darkness. His palm was calloused, warm against her skin. They sat like that, hand in hand, until the stars came out. The next morning, Olivia woke to the sound of hammering. She found Gideon on the roof of the house, replacing shingles that had come loose. You'll work yourself to death at this rate, she called up to him. He grinned down at her. Takes more than a few roof repairs to kill a Vance. As she watched him work, Olivia acknowledged what she had been feeling for days. This man, this quiet cowboy who had bid $1 for her freedom, had awakened something in her she thought was gone forever. It wasn't just gratitude, it was deeper, more profound. She busied herself with the chicks, setting up their new home in the repaired coop, trying not to think too hard about the future. Gideon had said nothing about staying beyond getting the farm back on its feet. The job with Judge Hamilton might keep him in the area, but that didn't mean he would stay with her. At noon, they sat in the shade of an old oak tree, sharing a simple meal of bread and cheese. "I've been thinking," Gideon said, brushing crumbs from his hands. "This place needs livestock. Chickens are a start, but you need a cow for milk, maybe a few goats. I can't afford livestock yet. There's a rancher north of here selling off some stock, old friend of my brother's. He might be willing to trade labor for a cow and a couple of goats." "Whose labor?" Olivia asked, though she already knew the answer. "Mine. I'm handy with fence repair." "You've already done so much, Gideon." He met her gaze. "I want to do more." The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Why?" Instead of answering, he leaned forward and kissed her. It was gentle, tentative, a question more than a demand. Olivia found herself responding, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heartbeat beneath her palm. When they broke apart, Gideon rested his forehead against hers. "That's why." Olivia closed her eyes, savoring the moment. "I thought perhaps you pitied me." "Pity?" Gideon drew back to look at her. "Olivia Lancaster, you're the strongest person I've ever met. You faced down that town, that bank, all on your own. You didn't break." He traced her cheek with his fingertips. "How could anyone pity such courage?" She turned her face into his touch. "I was so afraid." Courage isn't about not feeling fear, it's about facing it anyway. They sat beneath the tree for a long time, talking as they never had before. About their dreams, their fears, the people they had been and the people they hoped to become. By the time they returned to work, something fundamental had changed between them. That evening, as stars appeared in the deepening blue of the sky, Gideon took Olivia's hand and led her to the edge of her property, where a small creek bubbled over stones. "I want to show you something," he said, pointing to the western horizon where the last colors of sunset were fading. "When I was a boy, my father told me that twilight is when one day hands its hopes to the next, that whatever dreams didn't come true today might still find their way tomorrow." As if on cue, the first fireflies of the evening appeared, their tiny lights blinking on and off among the trees along the creek. "I stopped believing in tomorrow after Sarah died," Gideon continued. "Just lived each day as it came, never looking forward." He turned to face her. "Until I saw you." Olivia's heart quickened. "What did you see?" "A future," he said simply. "A reason to stop running." He knelt before her, still holding her hand. "I know it's too soon. We've known each other barely 2 weeks, but I think maybe our souls have known each other longer." From his pocket, he withdrew something small that gleamed in the fading light. "This was my mother's. I've carried it with me all these years, waiting for the right moment, the right person. It was a ring, a simple band of gold with a small pearl." "I'm not asking for an answer now," Gideon said. "Only that you think about it, about us, about what could be." Tears filled Olivia's eyes. "Gideon, you don't have to say anything," he assured her, rising to his feet. "Just know that whenever you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'll be here." Olivia looked at the ring, then at the man holding it. In his eyes she saw not just desire or infatuation, but something steady and true. "Ask me," she whispered. "Olivia Lancaster, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" "Yes," she said, the word carrying all the certainty she felt. "Yes, Gideon Vance, I will marry you." His smile was brighter than all the fireflies as he slipped the ring onto her finger. When he kissed her this time, it was with the promise of all the tomorrows to come. They were married 2 weeks later in Judge Hamilton's parlor, with the judge officiating and his wife and a few townspeople as witnesses. Olivia wore a new dress of soft green, with wildflowers in her hair. Gideon wore the only suit he owned, brushed clean of dust for the occasion. Their vows were simple but heartfelt, spoken with the conviction of people who had lost and found their way back to hope. After the ceremony, they returned to the farm, their farm now, as Gideon was quick to point out. To her surprise, Olivia found a new sign had been erected at the entrance to the property. Vance Family Farm. A wedding gift, Gideon explained. If you don't like it, I love it, she interrupted, tears of happiness blurring her vision. That night, as husband and wife, they discovered each other with tenderness and passion. Olivia, who had thought she would never feel such things again, found herself awakened to sensations and emotions that left her breathless. Gideon's touch was both gentle and urgent, his whispered words of love a balm to years of loneliness. In the quiet aftermath, as they lay entwined, Olivia marveled at the journey that had brought them to this moment. "I still can't believe that auction was only a month ago," she murmured against his chest. "Best dollar I ever spent," Gideon replied, his fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "Was that really the plan all along? The dollar bid?" He nodded. "The judge and I had already arranged to clear your debts legally, but I wanted to make a point that a person's worth isn't measured in dollars and cents." He kissed the top of her head. "Though I'd have paid any price for you." Olivia raised herself on one elbow to look down at him. "And what was it you said? That's all it takes to save an angel," Gideon smiled. "You were the angel that day, standing there with your head held high despite everything. But the truth is, Olivia Vance, you're the one who saved me." The weeks and months that followed were filled with hard work and sweet moments. The farm flourished under their joint care. The fields yielded crops, the garden produced vegetables in abundance, and the small herd of livestock grew. Gideon divided his time between the farm and his work with Judge Hamilton, often riding into town 2 or 3 days a week to help with legal matters. His reputation as a fair-minded advocate for the common folks spread, bringing more work than he could handle. "The judge wants me to take the bar examination," he told Olivia one evening as they sat on their porch, watching a summer thunderstorm roll in from the west. "Says I know more law than half the licensed attorneys in the territory." "You should do it," Olivia encouraged. "You have a gift for helping people." Lightning flashed, illuminating his thoughtful expression. "It would mean more time away from the farm from you." "We'd manage." She took his hand. "This farm is important, but so is the work you do in town. Those people need you." Gideon squeezed her hand. "Have I told you today how much I love you?" "Yes, but I don't mind hearing it again." They had been married 6 months when Olivia realized she was expecting a child. She kept the news to herself for several days, wanting to be certain before sharing it with Gideon. On a crisp fall evening, as they walked along the creek where he had proposed, she finally told him. "A baby." His voice was hushed, almost reverent. "You're sure?" Olivia nodded. "The doctor in town confirmed it yesterday." Gideon's face went through a kaleidoscope of emotions: joy, fear, wonder, and finally a deep, abiding happiness. He gathered her gently in his arms. "A baby," he repeated, his voice thick with emotion. "Are you happy?" she asked, knowing the memories this must stir for him. "Happier than I ever thought possible." He placed a hand on her still flat stomach. "And terrified too." "I'm scared as well," Olivia admitted, "but we'll face it together." Winter settled over the farm, blanketing the fields in snow. Gideon became even more protective of Olivia as her pregnancy progressed, insisting on handling the heavier chores himself. She indulged his concern most of the time, but still maintained her independence, continuing to manage the household and care for the smaller animals. One December evening, as they sat before the fire, Olivia working on a small blanket for the baby, Gideon reading a law book, a knock came at the door. They exchanged surprised glances. Visitors were rare, especially in winter. Gideon opened the door to find a young man standing there, snow dusting his shoulders. "James!" he exclaimed, embracing his brother. James Vance was younger than Gideon but bore a strong family resemblance. He stamped the snow from his boots before entering. "Heard you finally settled down, big brother. Had to see it for myself." Olivia welcomed her brother-in-law warmly. Over a hastily prepared meal, James explained that he had sold the family farm in Colorado and was heading to California. "Thought I'd stop by and meet the woman who accomplished what no one else could, getting Gideon to put down roots." James grinned at Olivia. "Though I should have known it would be you." "What do you mean?" she asked. "After that stagecoach accident, Gideon must have asked me 100 questions about the woman who helped me. I think he was half in love with the idea of you before he ever saw you." Gideon looked slightly embarrassed. "I was impressed by your kindness, that's all." "Uh-huh," James said skeptically. "That's why you carried that newspaper clipping about the Angel of Santa Fe for 3 years." Olivia turned to her husband in surprise. "You did?" Gideon rubbed the back of his neck. "It wasn't like that, I admired what you did, helping those people with no thought of reward." James stayed for 3 days, charming Olivia with stories of their childhood and observing with obvious approval the life his brother had built. On the morning of his departure, as he prepared to continue his journey west, James took Olivia aside. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For healing him. After Sarah died, I thought we'd lost him for good. He was alive but not living." James glanced at Gideon, who was saddling a horse for his brother. "I've never seen him like this, at peace, hopeful. That's because of you." Olivia watched her husband, seeing him through his brother's eyes, the ease in his movements, the ready smile that had once been rare. "He healed me too," she said softly. Spring arrived with renewed life. The fields turned green, fruit trees blossomed, and Olivia's belly grew round with their child. Gideon passed his bar examination with flying colors and formally joined Judge Hamilton's practice, though he still devoted as much time as possible to the farm. They converted the small room off the kitchen into a nursery, painting the walls a cheerful yellow and setting up a cradle that Gideon crafted himself. "You think it's a boy or a girl?" Olivia asked one evening as they prepared for bed. "Doesn't matter," Gideon replied, his hand resting on her swollen abdomen. "As long as both of you are healthy." The baby chose a stormy night in late May to make its entrance into the world. Gideon rode through the downpour to fetch the midwife from town, returning soaked to the skin but triumphant. The labor was long and difficult. Gideon refused to leave Olivia's side, holding her hand through each contraction, wiping her brow, murmuring encouragement. As dawn broke, bringing clear skies after the storm, their daughter was born, small but strong, with a lusty cry that brought tears to Gideon's eyes. "She's perfect," he whispered, cradling the tiny bundle with hands that seemed suddenly too large and clumsy for such a delicate task. Olivia, exhausted but radiant, watched her husband and daughter with a heart so full it might burst. "What shall we name her?" Gideon looked up, his face transformed by a joy so pure it took her breath away. "Hope," he said. "Her name is Hope." And so Hope Vance joined their family, bringing with her all the promise her name implied. The farm prospered, expanding as they acquired neighboring land. Gideon's legal practice grew, focusing on helping those who couldn't otherwise afford justice. 2 years after Hope's birth, Olivia gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Thomas and Sarah, honoring the partners they had lost while celebrating the family they had found. 5 years to the day after the auction where Gideon had bid $1 for Olivia's freedom, they hosted a celebration at the farm. Friends and neighbors gathered, including Judge Hamilton, now retired but still sharp as ever. As twilight descended, bringing with it the fireflies that danced along the creek, Gideon raised a glass. "To beginnings," he said, looking at Olivia with the same intensity that had captured her heart years before, "and to the power of a single dollar when given with love." Later, as their guests departed and their children slept, Gideon and Olivia stood on the porch of their home, his arm around her waist, her head on his shoulder. "You ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't been passing through Redemption Springs that day?" Olivia asked. "No," Gideon replied with certainty, "because I don't believe it was chance. I believe I was meant to find you." "The Angel of Santa Fe," she said with a soft laugh, referencing the nickname James had revealed. "My angel," Gideon corrected, turning her to face him. "Though I think maybe we saved each other." In the distance, a coyote called to its mate, a lonely sound made beautiful by its answer. Above them, stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, bearing witness to the love that had bloomed in the most unexpected circumstances. "They laughed when you bid that dollar," Olivia mused. "They didn't understand." "Most people don't," Gideon said. "They think saving someone means grand gestures, heroic sacrifices. They don't see that sometimes it's the small things, a dollar, a kind word, a hand reaching out in the darkness." He kissed her then, a kiss that held all the passion of their first days together and all the comfort of years shared. "I love you, Olivia Vance," he whispered against her lips. "And I love you, Gideon Vance," she replied. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days after." They remained on the porch long after night had fully fallen, wrapped in each other's arms, surrounded by the life they had built together, a life that had begun with laughter, a single dollar, and the heart of a cowboy who recognized an angel when he saw one.